Hi, my name is Josie and I read a lot. Currently, I unfortunately don't have anyone close to me that I can yap about books with. So I figured I could yap at the internet instead of into the void. So today we're gonna do the booktube newbie tag. From what I understand, it's a bit of a tradition on here. And I figured it's probably a good way for you to get to know me as a reader and see if maybe you'd like to follow along as I scream about stuff. So the first question is, why did you start this channel? I started this channel because, like I said, I don't really have anyone in my life to talk about books with. And I tend to have a lot of thoughts after I finish a book. And sometimes I'm like one of those people who enjoys saying things out loud. It helps me expand upon what I'm thinking. As soon as it's like into the world, I feel like I have more to say about it. And I feel like that's a shame to just keep to myself. I figured maybe someone out there would like to have a conversation with me about this and broaden my horizons a bit on my own perspectives on books. Maybe I'll find new things that I enjoy that I wouldn't have interacted with otherwise. And yeah, I feel like that's why I'm here. I also just happen to be in a place in my life where I feel a bit directionless, maybe need a new hobby, and I've always been kind of a creative person in a lot of different ways. So I think that maybe this will give me, like filming and editing, will give me a little bit of an outlet for that. Question number 2 is, what are some fun and unique things you can bring to booktube? This is kind of a hard question because I tend to be very self-deprecating, but I'm gonna try to be objective here and evaluate. First of all, I generally think that this space is quite American. Not saying that's a bad thing, but I am one of those people who enjoy hearing a lot of different perspectives on the same thing. I feel like a completely informed opinion is good to have. And so, as I'm Swedish, I think that I can bring a bit of that Scandinavian, European perspective into conversations about cool books. Maybe some cultural notes that I can provide for popular Swedish books, like the Fredrik Backman books I know have been big. And yeah, I think maybe I can provide something like that. Also, though, I am a computer science major, and I think I have quite a bit there to maybe contribute that other people can't. I remember reading Bride by Ali Hazelwood, for example, and dying on the inside at her description of a Raspberry Pi. It completely took me out of everything because I own one of those, and that description was all wrong. I also, generally speaking, see a lot of things in books about hacking that I know are factually incorrect, and that really grinds my gears. And maybe I can provide a bit of that. I can share my plight with you all. Question number 3 is, what are you most excited for about this new channel? I'm gonna have to list 2 things here because I can't choose between these 2. They're equally important to me. First, I'm really excited to just have people to discuss books with, maybe hear some of your opinions in response to mine. That feels cool to me, and the prospect of that really excites me. Second, generally speaking, like I said earlier, I'm a quite creative person, so I am excited to learn more about filming and editing and coming up with ideas and like putting them into practice, kind of. I think that's gonna be fun and cool. Question number 4 is harder for me to answer. It's, why do you love reading? To me, it's hard to answer on like a general level. I feel like I have more of a genre by genre reason for enjoying reading. When it comes to fantasy books, for example, they're my one true love. I really enjoy seeing how a different world would work if we did have magic. What would politics look like? What would relationships look like? What would be changed by this, like, sometimes small changes, sometimes big changes? I enjoy seeing stuff like that, and it really gets me thinking. The reason why I think I love this so much is because I've only lived this one life in this one place as this one person with my own circumstances and, you know, privileges that I do have. I think it's important for me as a human being to examine my position in the world and try to understand how it differs from that of other people who have other circumstances than I do. For example, reading books like Legendborn by Tracy Deonn helps me kind of explore the ramifications of being a Black woman in the US, of course, but still, that is something that I do not and will never know the feeling of entirely. But being inside of that character's head kind of helps me see her thought patterns, see what she reacts to and what makes her think about her own circumstances. And I feel like it helps me understand at least her situation a little bit better. I just enjoy new perspectives in general. Now that I think of it, I think this might extend beyond fantasy too, because one that I just thought of is Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. And that book really helped me examine how someone who has a very different relationship to their parents might be living their life. Also, someone who is biracial, of course, but what really stuck with me from that book is just like the difference in familial relations. It helps me explore a perspective that I otherwise would never be able to have on my own. And it broadens my view of the world and my understanding of it. And I think that is so helpful in so many different ways. That's what really excites me about reading and literature. Question number 5 is, what book or series got you into reading? This is gonna make some people mad, and I understand. But I can't deny that one of my first big series and one of my favorites to this day is Harry Potter. I received it, the first book, I received it in Swedish as a christening gift from one of my parents' friends. And it was the first book the first proper book with like chapters and everything that I read on my own. And it just like immediately really sparked my love for literature on the whole. I've read that book, all those books, the entire series, both in Swedish and English multiple times. I read that book at a time in my life when I was feeling really alone, and it really helped me get out of my own head and feel like I was escaping for a second, and that really, really helped. Later I did take kind of a break from reading because of school. It got to be a lot for me, and so unfortunately my hobby just kind of fell to the wayside. But then last year, about a year ago actually, I read the book The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I know people don't love this one so much, but I think it was just the right message at just the right time for me again, and it got me back into reading, and now I can't stop. Question number 6 is, what questions would you ask your favorite booktubers? This one's tough for me. But I think I would like to ask about their own personal criteria for a good book. I just feel like classics are classics for a reason. They have a sound structure, they have sound grammar and spelling, and the story was topical for its time, which is why it caught on so much with like the mainstream, so to speak. But there are still classics that I don't like. I'm willing to bet that you have classics that you don't enjoy. I know it puts some people off reading completely when they read one of the classics in high school and they're like, ugh, it's a slog, you know? So I would like to know what their more subjective criteria are for a good book, something that they enjoy. And like, sometimes it's hard to put words on that, but it would be interesting to know. The next question is, what challenges do you think starting a YouTube channel will have, and which will be the hardest to overcome? Honestly, I think staying consistent is gonna be a rough one for me. I don't think it will be hard for me to read books. I do that a lot anyway, but I think it will be hard to find my niche here, and I think that it will be hard for me to find an editing style that I like, a filming style that I like, coming up with ideas and like making sure everything is produced in a timely manner. But yeah, also I think it's just gonna be rough for me to be on camera. Some days I have a pretty rough self-confidence, but I'm trying to work on that, and I think this is a good step for that, but it's still gonna be rough for me. Also, when it comes to editing, I think it's gonna be hard to learn good editing. Something that feels personal to me, but also isn't too much, isn't too little, isn't like, doesn't feel off, kind of. I don't know how to explain this. Maybe that's the first step for me to take to learn. Yeah, I'm just willing to learn for my hobbies, I suppose. Question number 8 is, when did you start reading? Like I mentioned earlier, I first started reading as a kid and I was insatiable all through elementary school and like halfway through middle school. Then we moved, and like at first I was really close to a library, so I had really good access to books. But when we moved later on, I did not have as good access anymore to books, which is why it just became more time consuming. It required more planning to get a book, and yeah, it all just kind of dropped off. But then when I got older and I was studying in university and I was falling behind in some classes, I got diagnosed with ADHD at 21 years old. I was getting really sad, and then I thought back and I was like, what did I used to enjoy? You know? And reading just kind of came to me and helped me and guide me through a rough part of my life, yeah. And now we're here. Still pretty rough, but feeling a lot better. Question number 9 is, where do you read? I assume this question means like, which medium do you use to read? For the most part, I read physical books. I really like the feeling of turning the page, and the smell of the paper and the ink is one of the best things ever. But sometimes when I'm like, if I'm traveling or on a long commute or something, I will read on, I have a Kobo e-reader. I will read on that too. Also, I'm one of those people who like to have something, like listen to something all the time, whatever I'm doing. So if I'm cleaning or doing the dishes or just some menial task like laundry, or taking a walk even, I will often listen to audiobooks. The difference is that when I listen to audiobooks, it tends to be a very low stakes book that doesn't have me all that interested. Like romance books, for example. I like them sometimes, but most of the time they don't really hold my attention and they're not what I'm the most interested in. Yeah, so most of the time I will try to physically read books that have more detail, like fantasy books with a lot of names and details that you have to remember as you read to kind of keep track of where you are, if that makes sense. Our final question is, what kinds of books do you like to read? I already mentioned that fantasy is like my absolute favorite. I'm also very partial to sci-fi books. Like Project Hail Mary was so good. I just enjoy things like magical creatures. Fucking love dragons, by the way. A quest to be done is always fun. I also really like mystery books. Agatha Christie's great. I love young adult thrillers like Truly Devious and The Naturals. So great. Basically, I'm a mood reader. Kind of. I mentioned I read romance sometimes, though it's not always what I want to read. Sometimes the mood just kind of hits and you have to. The most important thing for me about a book is that it feels real. If, like, how do I explain this? Sometimes characters can feel pretty flat, like you don't know their motivations, their wants, their desires. They're just like a name and a hodgepodge of traits that don't always make sense. And those books really put me off. I tend to not finish those books because they bore me. I also tend to enjoy things with like a larger theme, like Bunny by Mona Awad or Iron Widow by Sharon J. Zhao, where it's not expressly put into words what it is about, but you just like feel the theme. It's between the lines in the book, you know? Anyway, those were all the questions, I think. So, trains are the bane of my existence. Anyway, that was the last question, so I guess we're done with this tag. I would be really curious to know your answers to some of these questions. Do you agree, disagree? How are we feeling? I would love a discussion about this. Please tell me in the comments what your favorite book is right now. I just moved and there's a library really close to me, so I would love to go pick up some new books soon. Anyway, I will try to... I think I'll do my best. That's what I think. If you stuck through to the end, thank you so much. I adore you, and I hope that you will consider liking this video and maybe subscribing. And I will see you hopefully next time. Bye.